Welcome back, everyone, to day 7 of Howling Week. Howling Week is an 8-day week. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But I am your host. I am your host, Evelyn. I am joined once again by Erynn.
Hi.
And
I
yeah,
also need to apologize that if you haven't noticed, the podcast is audio only right now, and it's because my equipment is holding us back.
what do you mean? The podcast was never video. We've always been audio. You're just
Always been
crazy and
audio
imagining things if you think we've been video.
I'm starting to question my reality.
Yeah, gaslighting isn't real. It's just something you and your friends made up.
Exactly.
Uh, but yeah, so we made it to the Howling 7, or the Howling New Moon Rising, or according to the title card, the Howling 7 Mystery Woman.
Yeah. We're right back to the another title on the title card.
I'm just what in what world was that a good subtitle for? Okay, we're not gonna start this. We're not gonna start like yeah. How do we get into this? So the Howling 7 is so we mentioned Clive Turner previously. He was the location scout for the Howling 3. He wrote the script and I think produced 4, and showed up briefly as a cameo role in 4. He was a primary actor in Howling 5 and wrote the script for that movie and produced it as well. Was not a part of the production of the Howling 6, and I guess there's some sour grapes there because he's gone on record as saying he didn't like 6 as much.
And which we'll get to that in the Howling 7's plot.
But he went back. He came back with the Howling 7, and I think his idea, because like we've mentioned how like the films through this point have all kind of been sort of in their own isolated bubbles, and it seems like his goal with the Howling 7 was to like unify the timeline, to bring all these Howling movies together into a cohesive narrative that he can like cap off here. And
yeah, we'll be discussing where exactly and how exactly he did that, but that's going to become relevant for sure.
And he somehow he landed upon the real life town of Pioneer Town, California, which is, I guess it was set up as like a kind of like Spawn Ranch, where it was like set up that you could like a bunch of like old West Town facades. And after they stopped making westerns in like the late 50s, a bunch of bikers moved in, and it became a biker town for a while, and then just kind of became a small desert community after that. And that's pertinent because he uses a bunch of like Pioneer Town locals as his actors in this movie. And it gives it like, again, we'll get into that, but I feel like this is all important. It's really hard to articulate the movie that we're about to discuss, but like this is important preamble. Yeah, we begin with there is this we have a scene of a dead body, and we're introduced to this inspector who's so they're, I think they're like talking. There's like him and 2 other guys, and they're like, wow, it looks like an animal killed this person. And the inspector's like, yeah, it wouldn't take Sherlock Holmes to figure that out, or something like that. And that's our like there's a werewolf in this movie set up.
Yeah, and I think also they like there's a bit of, you know, the Howling really likes to indulge in the like, do we believe it, do we not believe it? So I think they narrow down. They say that it's a wolf is kind of like their compromise.
They haven't, because something leads him. He decides he's gonna like go talk to this priest in the area, but as he does that, we cut to the opening sequence where our hero Clive Turner himself is like biking into town on a Harley motorcycle, and he's like grown his beard out since we saw him in Howling 4. You know, locks flowing in the wind, driving out to Pioneer Town, California.
It's kind of funny. I'd like to just point out, incredibly similar to the Howling 6, which was the one he wasn't involved in.
Yeah,
it kind of seems like he's setting up his own Howling 6.
He's like, you know what, a drifter going to a desert community, I like that. I'm taking that.
You guys ate that little one.
Yeah, which is interesting because after he arrives in town, we cut back to the inspector meeting up with the priest, and I just, in my notes, eventually I started calling the inspector and the priest the Exposition Brothers.
Oh yeah, and I had a question on that actually. The like whole investigation, right?
Okay,
because they determined that this body is Mary Lou.
Yeah,
right?
Or that Mary Lou was in the area.
No, I thought they were saying that the body is Mary Lou's body, and she attended the circus.
Well, no, because we get into it later, because Mary Lou at the end of 5 was revealed to be a werewolf. And the plot of this movie, he like retcons a bunch of stuff where they're like, what was it? She escaped to this town and changed her face, because he said something like, there's like a line where they're like, how come nobody's found this woman? And he's like, the werewolf can change its face.
Well, and I think they find her body. I think they say that the body they find is Mary Lou.
Well, no, because that with the ending, like the
pull up the Howling 7. Pull up the Howling 7. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. I swear to God, that's what it is. Because I think it's everything you're saying, and he thinks the body is Mary Lou's.
He might, yeah. I can't remember how they arrive at it, but he does, because the priest does start.
That's his like intro into werewolves. That's what I thought what happened, which had me questioning. It had me asking a lot of questions.
Yeah,
are they, so they're different? Where I think there's like, by retconning it, there's like a bunch of different types of werewolves, and are we meant to think about all the werewolves as the same type of werewolf?
Maybe.
Because the one in 6 looks incredibly different than the one in 5, and the one in this one.
Yeah, and also we. Just by the fact that 6 as a movie is like confirmed to have happened, like with Ian being like a good guy werewolf, it really muddles the waters of 4 and 5, which also happened in this timeline, being like werewolves are always the devil.
Yeah, werewolves are always the devil, but then they established that freaks did happen. So that means that werewolves only transform on the moon. Like, the lore is so wonky by this point. And it's like, it's one of those things where usually if it's like a single film or something like that, or if there's at least a consistency, you're able to kind of suspend disbelief. But by this one, they're like, it's just gotten, like you said, incredibly muddled.
Maybe it's like World of Darkness, where there's like different sub-breeds of werewolf.
So that's kind of what it feels like.
It's like they're Fiona and he's Gid of Fenris, and like.
Because like I didn't say this in the Freaks episode, but the Freaks werewolf is giving cats.
I took a drink. I almost choked on it. Just
like a jellicle werewolf.
No, that's where at the end of, like, you know how he walks off into the desert. He's going to the heavy side layer.
He's like, touch me. It's so easy.
No, he's all alone in the moonlight. It's a werewolf thing. It's perfect.
Oh my god, what? Evelyn, if anybody out there makes this movie, Evelyn and I are going to sue you. We are registering this with the WGA immediately after ending this podcast.
Werewolf, Howling the musical. That's where we need to take this.
Howling the musical. It might be better than a lot that's opened on Broadway recently.
Ooh.
No, there's actually been a lot of good things said about Jaws. I take that back. Jaws the musical is apparently good.
This was a hell of a way for me to learn that there is a Jaws the musical on Broadway right now.
There is a Jaws the musical on Broadway right now. And there's a song called We're Gonna Need a Bigger Boat.
BRB, I'm gonna go throw up real quick.
What do you think was gonna take over the Phantom of the Opera? No, I'm just kidding.
The inspector like goes to talk to the priest, and the priest is like, yeah, there's these werewolves, and he pulls up video footage, which is footage from the last movie, because the actress that played Mary Lou in the Howling 5 had like a cameo role in 6 as like one of the random people watching the freak show. And here they like retcon that to have been the same person. And he's like, Mary Lou is the werewolf you're looking for, and you can see she was watching the circus here. And he like points her out in the footage. And I think they mentioned that the circuit, the like freak show, like had just been to this town or this area recently. And that's like the connective fiber. But he's like,
nobody's mentioned Stirba, the coolest werewolf, but like, yeah, we have all this dialogue about.
Also, is that because we weld the canons of like 4 through 7 together. But I don't know where that leaves the canon of like 1, 2, and 3.
Because I guess, I thought 1, 2, and 3 were canon just because 1 has that like throwaway line about there being different groups of werewolves across the world. So I thought it was then kind of becoming an anthology about like the different groups of werewolves. Then Clive Turner has to come in here and do his own vision. This is just it's The Last Jedi and The Force Awakens.
Because that's the thing, like, this movie I'm not sure I like, but Clive Turner was also the one responsible for the stories of 4 and 5, which I did kind of like.
I'm going to be so real. I kind of liked it, but it wasn't a Howling movie. Yeah. So I feel misled and lied to.
This is like, if you've ever watched the series Letterkenny, it almost feels like he wanted to make like a Letterkenny, but instead of being about people in southern Ontario, it would just be about people in the California desert south of Barstow.
Yeah, it's incredibly surreal because like now that we've introduced the B plot, like the B plot, we've described it kind of like the way we described it made it sound like they're going through all of that in one scene. That is the B plot. The B plot is going over the Howling 5.
Yeah, and they do this in maybe like 2 or 3 locations over the course of the movie. And it's like the same 2 guys in the same handful of rooms just dumping exposition.
And then sometimes one of them will go, I'm kind of tired. I'm going to go to bed for the night. And then the other one's like, well, don't stay up too late. And then they come back together and it's, like you said, the same thing.
Yeah, so the priest is like, Mary Lou is the werewolf, and the inspector's like, oh boy. And then we cut back to Clive, I think his character's name is Ted. Ted has arrived at this bar in Pioneer Town, and he, like, comes in, and it's the most, like, middle-aged people just hanging out. Like, they make some, like, he like, introduces himself, and they, like, make some dick jokes. And they make some, like, they're like, oh, she's been around here since 1972, and they all laugh. It's like Cheers, but, like, rednecky.
Oh, a dead ass. And on that note, actually, it's like, you have these scenes in the bar that, like, pretty much look like they were shot and function as a multicam like sitcom where they're all at like the watering hole, and then you have it cut between like these two guys and then just extended clips from Five. And I was reading about the production on like Wikipedia has an excerpt from a source that says that I guess it was like a decision out of necessity because there was another guy who was slated to direct it. I completely forgot who, but he left due to creative differences. And then that's when Clive Turner kind of took over and he had to like reshoot. He reshot, I guess, 70% of what had already been shot. And so I'm wondering if everything that looks like a multicam is what was reshot.
Yeah, which also I really want to know what that like lost footage is. Like, what's that movie?
Honestly,
because
right?
that's like practically a whole nother movie. It sounds like.
Plot twist: it's a documentary about line dancing.
Oh shit! It's just more line dancing. But yeah, I described a lot of the because a large chunk of this movie is just like people talking at the bar, and I said it feels like if you were like a kid, especially in like the pre-cell phone era, and like your parents or your grandparents like took you someplace that they were like hanging out with their friends and like shooting the shit, and you were just like an awkward kid and were like, wow, I don't know what they're talking about. I wish there were other kids around. I wish I could like watch cartoons or something. And like that's what this movie feels like. It feels like sitting there watching your grandparents talk to people.
Yeah, as one of those children who, like, you know, I would hang out at the VFW with her grandparents a lot as a child. That is the perfect way to describe this movie. It's like a documentary slice of life film about all these like children of the 60s who got into motorcycles and westerns.
Yeah. Again, though, it's kind of like I can't say I didn't enjoy these scenes. Like there was something oddly like relaxing about them. Like if I just had a super cut of these, you know, I put them on in the background while I work on something.
I just started like dissociating as if like I was in the situation. I actually think that Clive Turner was going for a Bertolt Brecht approach where you feel like you're sitting in the bar with them. So there's this breaking down of the fourth wall that's done with the Howling franchise, and I actually
very
think
artful.
It's an extremely artful decision on Clive Turner's part. Also, final note about Clive Turner before we continue with the plot, but I think it's incredibly funny that he said the lore of the first one everybody likes or the second one everybody also likes. He said, no, actually, I'm going to take over and the lore is going to be from what I've written.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you can tell. Because also, yeah, because he doesn't pull from 6 as much, and 6 is the one he didn't write.
He almost begrudgingly has to.
Yeah. Which, like, you know, he had a vision and he stuck to it. I can respect that.
Like I said, the plot is literally the same, I think. So, like, he's just remaking Howling 6 how he wanted to make it.
I was watching, so I'm a big fan of Joe Bob Briggs, who does The Last Drive-In on Shudder, and he used to do Monster Vision on TNT in the 90s. And he did a night on Monster Vision where he showed The Howling 3 followed by this movie. And there's like a clip I saw where he comes out and he's like, so when I said I was showing The Howling 3, a lot of you wrote in saying, oh, you don't want to show that? That's horrible. Where were you guys when I was going to show this movie?
That is an incredibly bonkers. I was telling Evelyn that if we ever do a live show where we watch The Howling 7, we should like make everybody line dance with the movie.
It's like, you know, when the 3D movies, they're like, time to put on your glasses. We're just like, time to get up and line dance.
Get up, everyone. We set the chairs in like a big circle.
Exactly.
A big semicircle facing the projector so that there's plenty of space.
But also, the other thing is, Joe Bob mentioned he really wants to have Clive Turner on The Last Drive-In, and he like can't find him he's just Clive Turner is just in the wind, and like nobody who's worked with him knows where he is exactly. He's just in Australia somewhere.
Clive Turner is obviously raising his marsupial werewolf baby in the Australian outback off the grid.
Yeah, and he's gonna come back and be a college professor. And
exactly, Clive Turner just is a werewolf.
But back at the movie, I did have a note where like, the one thing about the people hanging out at the bar, you can tell he used a lot of locals because their performances are like, they feel like people who weren't trained to act, but also because they're basically playing themselves, it doesn't feel like when an actor is giving a bad performance, it just feels like they're playing like a slightly distorted version of themselves.
Oh my god, yes. Yes, so when I was in Colorado, I did a lot of like behind the scenes filming of events, and that was like part of like the freelance I did. And there's this interesting effect that happens when you're like just filming behind the scenes around people who like know they're being filmed and like consent to being filmed, but like don't know what to do. It's like a camera comes out and people start acting like wooden versions of themselves. And I think that's kind of the effect that's being created from exactly that phenomenon that you're saying.
Yeah,
they're
it's kind of like
overplaying themselves.
Yeah, it's very, because it feels weird, but it also feels genuine in a way. It's very like cinema verite. And
this film is extremely cinema verite. Didn't someone get a cinema verite tattoo?
Maybe.
All I can remember is that somebody had a cinema verite tattoo.
Yeah,
who?
Yeah, I can't remember who. I know what you're talking about.
Oh my god, that's gonna bother me. I'm probably gonna remember. Yeah. But anyway.
But so after some more hanging out at the bar, we get to the real meat of this movie, which is the country line dancing, which is lit in this very like spooky cinematic way. Like it's very stark, like they're like stark shadows lighting on everyone.
Honestly, it seems like the only part of the movie they cared about.
Yeah. And this is where like Clive kind of hits it off with this like girl who lives in town, and we establish her as like kind of the love interest. And then he has to dip out, and he's like talking into a tape recorder at night about how he's like, I've infiltrated the town. I just have to gain their trust.
Which it's a little like Tommy Wiseau, like I'll record it's very odd.
Yeah. But also I'm not sure. I think we're supposed to like maybe wonder if he's the werewolf. Briefly.
I think that's exactly what I got. It's like it almost seems like he's trying to do a red herring. Yeah. Because the voice recorder to me, I mean, it just feels like somebody who just learned that you're supposed to show not tell in a movie, because you can't really have a character like describe how they're thinking, and that's not really interesting. It's like that they heard that rule and said, "No. Gotcha." What if he's tape recording himself describing how he's feeling? And it's like, I guess.
But then we cut to a montage which shows how he's decided to gain the town's trust, which is like he's helping him out. Like, I think he gets like a job helping out at the bar, but then he's also like helping people out with their random tasks around town, like moving wood, and like there's this one part where he's like helping these guys sweep up the floor, and they're all wearing these like goofy ass decorative, like it's like the kind of decorative sombrero they put on you like if you tell them it's your birthday at a Mexican restaurant.
Oof.
And I don't know, it's a very weird scene where I
literally like, texted Evelyn and said
she just sent me like that like awkward grimacing emoji several times.
Like, which I'd also like to point out, this like little like save the cat moment, it feels exactly like Howling 6.
Yeah, this is his fixing up the church.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he like integrates with the town, and then we get another bar scene where
Which,
he's like, he's everyone's friend now. They liked him.
but I find it incredibly interesting, right? So 5 had this effect where like the killing started happening and nobody believed it was anybody. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the interesting thing about this, like how the town functions, is that they are still suspicious of Ted. And I find that incredibly interesting.
Yeah, well, I noticed that is like in all the movies that, well, I guess not all the movies because it wasn't really in 5, but in 4 and 7, they both have this strong through line of like town gossip as like a thing. And like I don't know what that means, but that was an interesting like, because that's kind of where it starts, where it's like it's like the circle of like kind of gossipy ladies that first start like being suspicious of him.
The gossipy ladies in their pixie cuts.
Yeah, and well, there's this one lady that I don't even know what you would call that, because it's like it's kind of like a mullet, but it's like starker
like the mullet
than
pixie cut.
Yeah, it's like it's a very like it's very like a 90s Karen haircut, but it's
I never read it as a 90s Karen haircut. I would always read it as a 90s bisexual cut. Because I feel like it was all the like at least all the lesbian women I knew, they all had that haircut and they all kind of like dressed like that.
Interesting.
When I was growing up.
I guess I didn't know a lot of like queer women in the 90s, so maybe that might be.
I gotta say, this movie was incredibly nostalgic for me because it's Pioneer Town, California, but I think that Colorado is extremely like pioneer frontier townsy. So Colorado is very much like that frontier town, ye old western. And so I think for me, and also I grew up, like my grandparents took me and my siblings to like Sturgis and stuff growing up. So I think this whole film just felt incredibly nostalgic to me, and I felt like I understood everyone and everything. You know what I mean?
Having like even lived in Colorado for just a short time, like the vibe is definitely there. Also, I forgot there's a running joke in the film that like Ted is really into George Jones, who's like an older like country western singer, and like he keeps bringing up George Jones and people keep being like, who's that? And he's like, you don't know George Jones? And like it's a running thing, and like I wanted to, it never really goes anywhere. It's just like an odd little aside that keeps popping up.
It's like the film has inside jokes in it that were in the town and with the filmmakers.
Maybe that's it.
So I'm convinced you only understand this film if you're from Pioneer Town and worked on it.
It's like those students who make like who are in film school and they make a film for the class, and all the movies it references are movies that you watched in that class.
Yes. I can't believe you said that, because we have so many peers who have done that, Evelyn.
I was thinking of a specific one, actually, not to come for anybody, but...
I thought it was a great film, and I understood it. But I took the class.
I mean, yeah. But,
also, they were pretty important films. This one, it's like, did you see and work on the Howling 7? Have you been to Pioneer Town? I wonder if they have it on loop on like a TV in Pioneer Town. Like, do you think if you bring it up there, they'll like, no?
Well, because Joe Bob mentioned that he went to Pioneer Town, and he was like, they don't really recognize this movie in Pioneer Town.
Did he go to Pioneer Town to track down Clive Turner?
I think so. Because he was like, but also because he's like, such a big, Joe Bob Briggs is like a big fixture in the horror movie community. Mm-hmm. So he was in Pioneer Town, and like two of the locals were like, they're like, oh, you in Pioneer Town, Howling 7? He's like, yeah, Howling 7.
That is so funny.
He's like, if he's a horror movie guy, there's only one horror movie attached to this town.
That sounds like they're like a little disappointed.
Yeah.
We're here for the Howling 7. We know. You want to ask us about what that was like when they filmed it here?
Yeah. Well, part of me is like, when I get back to California, are we going to take a road trip up to Pioneer?
You better believe that's the first thing we're doing when you get to California.
We'll both get our bikers like licenses and we'll ride up there on our Harleys.
Oh my god. Oh my god. Wait, I need to tell you something after this podcast, but I'll tell you after the podcast.
Oh boy, I am so excited.
It's a creative idea.
Oh boy.
Evelyn and I are business women, but
so yeah, after some more hanging out in the bar with Clive, we cut back to the Exposition brothers. The priest, so he's gotten the connective fiber with 6 out of the way, and so he starts at the beginning of he talks a little bit about 4, but then he goes back to the start of 5, that like sequence in the Middle Ages, and he talks about, he's like, this castle was taken by the devil and everyone killed themselves to keep there from being a werewolf. But then, like, the kids survived, which was all backstory in Howling 5. But,
it was incredibly surreal.
Again.
The way he, like, gives it again, it was incredibly surreal because I feel like it, like, 5 is still my favorite one, okay?
Yeah.
But, like, it was interesting to see the creator of 5, who literally wrote it, be discussing it in this other film he wrote. And, like, the way he's explaining it isn't exactly how it was.
Yeah, well, yeah,
because he's incredibly interesting.
Yeah, because he keeps like retconning stuff so that they all connect when they weren't originally meant to connect. But also, yeah, now that you pointed out, it is interesting sometimes because I think sometimes I've heard this discussion with video games, but I think it also applies to film, where like sometimes a creator will make something that's really amazing, but they won't understand the thing. They will think it's amazing for a different reason than it's actually amazing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you know what? That makes a lot of sense, and that feels like exactly what it is.
But
also, if anybody can hear my cat again, yeah, she gets really mad when I record the podcast because I'm not paying attention to her.
She's got thoughts about these movies.
She feels very strongly about the Howling films.
That makes sense. She's like, why can't they make a movie called The Meowling?
She's like, I'm a movie star now, Mom. My cat was in a student exercise at school, but sorry. Back to...
Yeah. So we go back to the bar, and I just wrote, this is the most middle-aged person movie I've ever seen.
That's a great way to put it.
Because they're just... and then we cut back to the inspector, and he's like recapping... like he recaps most of 5, and he's like, yeah, on all these, so like all these people went to this castle, and then like they died, and the werewolf is out in the world, and then the inspector's like, okay, well, it's like 1:30 right now, and I need to sleep, so can we catch up on this tomorrow?
That was the funniest exit out of the two of them talking. Like, because they have like an extended conversation about it.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, it's like, it felt like us planning the podcast, where he's literally like, okay, so can we wrap this up and then come back tomorrow? And he's like, yeah, sure, that's fine.
And then they're like, okay. And you know what? The other really funny thing about it is that it's indicative of like Clive Turner, I think, during this process, because like I think, was this his first thing he's ever directed?
It might be the only thing he's ever directed.
Okay, you didn't have to drag him like that. You said, yeah, and it was his last, bitch. Well, just kidding.
It was another thing, I guess, Joe Bob found out, was that he went back to... Because I guess Clive Turner had worked as a gaffer on a bunch of movies, and he went back to gaffer work after this.
He went... That just opened a whole can of worms for the questions I have about how this movie was lit then. Because the only thing that's lit with care is the line dancing. So that tells me Clive was like, let me.
Well, this that I can attest to, because like I remember when I was making my not my first short film, but my one of my short films, I was the person who owned a boom, like had my own boom mic setup. So I ended up being like kind of the audio person for a lot of other people's short films. And so the problem with this was I was like the qualified or like the experienced audio person that I knew. And so when I was directing my movie, that meant I couldn't be the audio person. So ironically, the film that was directed by an audio person ended up having the shittier audio because that person was busy directing. And so I feel like Clive with lighting is that's where we're at.
That checks out, and he probably stepped in for the line dancing sequences. He said, "Let me make sure this is right." But
this is important.
This is really important. The theme is line dancing, and everything has to go back to that. It's really funny though, that scene, like the way that one scene ends with the professor and him like, okay, we gotta go to bed. That's like the most like first time director like choice to make, and I noticed it a few times in this movie where Clive Turner doesn't just end a scene. He feels like he has to like wrap it up like he would in the real world. So like it kind of like makes that pseudo documentary effect that you said this felt like. It made it feel heightened.
It does.
Because you're like, I literally can't leave. This is like real life.
Well, because I feel like that even applies to, because we talked about how kind of like the stage effect in 5, where like, you know, the scene wouldn't end until everyone had like exited the room or whatever. Mm-hmm. So like, it's like everything has to have a definite beginning and ending.
Yeah, Clive Turner's style is that every single scene has to come to its natural conclusion.
And then we get so the next day we are back at the bar, and there's a show from, they're like a couple who I think are like a real country musicians in real life. And it's like Pappy and someone else.
Pappy and Patty. I don't know. I don't remember.
Let me see. Howling 7, Pappy.
They have a cute little duo costume.
But Pappy Allen and Harriet Allen, and they're like, yeah, I guess they're like real like country musicians from like back in the. It's like, I will say this, because it's that kind of like, it's the like pre 9/11 country, so it's kind of fun, you know, like it's not like
it's like. Yeah, it's not my vibe. I like a lot of I like country music, but it was not my country music.
Yeah, it's like it's like really really old person country, like, you know. Because I think he sings a song called "Stand Up," which I think, because I this is another thing, I'm quoting Joe Bob a lot, but I think Joe Bob said that song was from like the 30s or something.
Well, the "Stand Up" one specifically was incredibly surreal, because you have kind of like that was the moment for me where I was like, okay, is this a werewolf movie, or is this a horror movie, or like what is this? Because they're literally this is supposed to be a werewolf movie. There are werewolves killing people. Somebody has already died, and these people are all sitting around a campfire singing like Kumbaya, and everybody's so excited every day. There was also a little exchange that happened, I think, around this point in the film, where like everybody keeps getting mad at like his love interest, because like the way it's kind of directed makes me read it as, because like they're jealous. And I remember there was this one exchange where she was like Ted's in everyone's beds, and she's like, Ted hasn't been in my bed. And I was like, Ted is a dork. What do you mean?
Oh my God. I'm having a surreal moment. So I was looking up, I was like, why are these two like country musicians in this movie? And the reason they're in this movie is because they own the establishment Pappy and Harriet's, that is a restaurant in Pioneer Town, California. That was where all the bar scenes were shot. Like, I'm looking at, like, the Google Maps tag and, like, people's, like, photos of inside the building, and I'm like, this is literally the building from the movie. This is like, this is fascinating.
Wait, did Joe Bob Briggs go there?
I don't know. Mate, probably.
He's like, do you guys know Clive Turner? Everybody gets like all like, there's like a piano, something drops on the piano and hits all the keys, and like everyone sits up and looks.
Yeah.
No one's said that name in this town for years.
So what I'm saying is, when we make our road trip, we have to go to Pappy and Harriet's.
We have to go to Pappy and Harriet's, exactly.
They have dine-in, takeout, no delivery, so you can't get... Can you DoorDash from Pappy and Harriet's? So
anybody near Pioneer Town, can you Uber Eats?
We are getting so off base right now.
To be fair, what plot is there to talk about?
True. So they're dancing around to this country music, and this guy shows up who is like, him and Clive kind of like, they know each other, and there's some friction, and this guy gets a little drunk, and he's like, oh, well, maybe I should tell everyone something, and like, Clive's like, okay, can we talk outside? And they like talk outside, and he like tells him to get the heck out of here.
Not in front of the ladies.
Yeah, literally.
Not in front of the ladies. I can't do an Australian accent.
And then we kind of get, I was going to say the first appearance of our werewolf. We don't really see it. It's like, it's a POV werewolf, but it's not like in part 5, because they've just applied this red filter that looks like the werewolf is if you're familiar with the Tiger R Zone or the Nintendo Virtual Boy, it looks like the werewolf is just trapped inside an R Zone.
I felt like it was like I was playing like Arkham again, and I was in like detective mode anytime it was like the
It's just like a red filter that you can't see anything. I think it's supposed to be like the werewolf's night vision or whatever.
You know, and one thing is, I am obsessed with like that, like on video, like, I mean, for lack of a better word, shitty quality. Like, you can't really make out anything, you can't really do anything, but there's, I think, an art to doing that. Like, any footage with the red filter, it's just like, it's like the end of 2001, but like not very well composed. So you're just like, I don't even know what's going on.
Yeah. But yeah, so the werewolf sees
not to drag.
this,
sorry if the cinematographer is listening, but you know, I think you could have been. I think you could have taken a little more time with the shots.
It was probably a good shot before they just slapped a red Kool-Aid filter over it.
Literally. Oh yeah.
But so the werewolf zeroes in on this guy and kills him, which sets up some problems for later. Because Clive, I think so. Clive sees that he finds him dead, and is like, "Well, I gotta." He decides to bury that. Like, we don't really see because that's the interesting part, is he's our main character, but also I feel like the movie tries to make us suspicious of him, which was interesting. Because we see him burying this guy. He like goes into the guy's motel room, and like takes all this stuff. And Clive drops a photo of Mary Lou. It was like her glamour shot. Like, you could tell it was just that headshot, that actress's headshot that they just used.
They said, "Do you have a photo we can use?" And she said, "Yeah, I do. I'll send it over."
Well, and
it's interesting because she's not like saying she's Mary Lou.
Yeah.
She's like taking on like the alias of another woman.
Yeah.
And so it's like the Mary Lou who you think is the one dead in the beginning. It's like, no, this is Mary Lou. That was another lady who she's now in person. And it was like, oh.
Yeah, it's...
Okay.
But yeah, but so like
It might have been, honestly, it kind of feels like it should have been more of a psychological thriller where Ted is getting gaslit the whole time. It's like almost like something like Blow Up or something.
yeah, that
It
would
feels
be...
like it should be something like that. It just really feels like he's really upset that he wasn't involved in Howling 6 and he's got to do his own version. And I think in a couple of different places that storytelling decision holds it back.
Yeah.
He said, I want it to be about line dancing. I want it to be my Howling 6.
Yeah, I think he saw the first part where it was like this guy getting accepted by this small town community, and that like hit something Freudian within Clive Turner where he's like, I wish I was accepted by a small town community, and so he just made this entire movie about that without the like turnaround that I guess there is a turnaround. We're not I'm not being fair to Mr. Turner.
He went to MapQuest and he typed in small pioneer towns near me. He saw Pioneer Town. He went there immediately after watching The Howling 6. And then he was determined. Then he was like, this was a sign from the universe.
Yeah,
I respect that.
Yeah. I mean, we rag on it, but I feel like you do genuinely... Like, there is something that comes through where you genuinely get the idea that he was very enamored with this town and wanted to show it off.
Yeah, I think we're being incredibly critical of what deserves to be critical, but at the end of the day, you're right. It does have a nostalgic charm to it.
I think that's what makes it charming, was that, and I think that's why the werewolf stuff doesn't work, because that genuine interest isn't there with the werewolf stuff, where it is there with the town stuff.
Do you think the red filter it was like in the old one, or is that like a Clive Turner choice?
Yeah, that's a good question. I couldn't tell you. I feel like it was probably in the old one, just because it's more likely that all the werewolf stuff was like from the early shoots.
That makes sense.
But yeah, so he's sneaking into hotel rooms, and there's a couple of the ladies in town are like, this guy's acting kind of sus. We need to like look into like what he's doing. And so then we cut back and they recap some more of, I think they recap a little bit of 4 now, because when we cut back, Clive is on the phone and he's like, yeah, I'm looking into it. The other guy you sent got killed. And as he hangs up the phone, we see on the other end of the phone is Marie from the Howling 4, who we kind of thought died at the end of that movie. We weren't entirely sure.
who was heavily implied to have died. Yeah, which that makes it even more confusing if you're supposed to feel like he's a werewolf or not. Because if she did survive, she would be a werewolf. Like, wouldn't she?
Yeah, I mean, maybe they're... Well, because all we saw at the end of 4 was, like, a werewolf jumps up, and she, like, goes, oh, or, like, she, like, startles. So, like, I guess...
She took it out, and now she's a hardened werewolf hunter.
Well, I guess the canon is either she killed the werewolf, or the werewolf immediately died, and she was just like, oh, shit, that was scary.
The werewolf was jump scared by her, and it gave him a heart attack, and he just passed out, died on the spot. But yeah, she's in this movie. The actual actress is like filming new footage for this movie, which was cute. Like it was cute that she came back. So then we cut back to the priest and the inspector, and we get this weird aside with like the priest's like secretary or something. And I think she's supposed to have, like, dementia or something. Because she's, like, there's this whole bit about how she can't remember what town they're in. And I think it's supposed to be funny, but it's just really weird. It was, who was heavily implied to have died. Yeah, I think we're being incredibly critical of what deserves to be critical, but at the end of the day, you're right. It does have a nostalgic charm to it. I read it as it's like that like place in Greek mythology. Pioneer Town is just like you get in Pioneer Town and then you start drinking the Coors Light at the beer at the bar and like you don't realize how much time has passed, and then as you emerge and you realize like she's been in Pioneer Town since she was a young pup. And now she doesn't know where she is because
they're in. Well, I think they're in.
Wait,
Barstow
I guess they're not in Pioneer Town.
Because she's like, you'll have to look up my son when you're in Barstow, and he's like, but we're in Barstow.
But we're in Barstow. Yeah, that was an incredibly surreal moment.
Mostly because I don't think old people like getting dementia is funny.
It's definitely not, for sure. And also...
maybe that's me being an easily triggered millennial, but, like, I'm like, this is an incredibly serious thing. I'm not going to laugh at that.
Well, and it's even more surreal because everything else has been kind of toilet humory. So it's kind of like the first attempt at any, like, higher brow than that humor. So it just reads off in so many ways. You're like, wait a minute. You're like, what? Yeah. Dementia. But, is this also where we find out that, like, weird... add on to the lore where like there's the 3-year thing? Is that this part?
Yeah, because I have that next in my notes where because I think he talks about because the Howling 5 was like 3 years before this, and he's like 3 years is how long it takes a werewolf to grow to full power, so the werewolf will be trying to like whatever, and we've just tacked that onto the lore now.
And it's like, oh my god, it's been 3 years since Howling 5.
Which, like, that's, because, when did this movie come out? I think it came out in 95. I was 2 years old when this movie came out.
This movie is a year older than me.
We were... I don't know what that means, but I just imagine, like, like the split screen of, like, what we were both doing while Clive Turner's in the desert filming Howling. It's...
That's hilarious.
So we go back to the town, and these town ladies, they break into Clive's, his motel room, and they're, like, looking around, and there's a briefcase that the other guy had that was full of money. And they think that they see it under Clive's bed, and she like opens it and she's like, it's just full of George Jones tapes. and that was kind of funny. That was a good, setup and payoff.
Those are like the moments that I really like about the movie.
Yeah. So I don't think they find anything, but then there's also like a guy who I think was like...
Oh, sorry.
He was like cheating on his wife and having a hookup with this lady who has really big hair, and like I think they heard the werewolf, so they like become witnesses, kind of.
And like there's like a bunch of humor around them ducking the lady.
Yeah.
And like the lady she's one of the most I think this is a person in the town actor.
Oh,
I think
absolutely.
all of the actors for sure, because she was also where I noticed that like he has to take the scene to the very end, because every single scene with her she's like, oh well, what else? And then it just goes on forever, which I don't mind. She's kind of like she got star quality.
Yeah, she got the Dolly Parton hair,
Exactly. But I think the big change is that everybody is fully against Ted, which I thought was a little bit fascinating, especially with 5.
Yeah, because we're not fully there yet, but yeah, it's like slowly happening.
Yeah.
Because then we go back to the bar that night, and like they're hanging out. Clive's there, and there's this guy who's like kind of being a dick, and Clive is like, oh, hey, I bet I could... I can't remember what the bit is, where he's like, I bet you $20 I could... Oh, he puts a shot glass under his hat, and he's like, I bet you $20 I could drink this shot glass without moving my hat. And the guy's like, sure. And then, so Clive, like, sits under the table and, like, has his friend really obviously slide him a glass of beer. And he, like, drinks it, and he's like, haha. And the guy's like... The guy like lifts up the hat because he's like, obviously you didn't drink that, And then Clive goes and grabs the shot glass and drinks it, and he's like, see, I drank it without touching my hat. And then he takes the guy's $20, and it's like it's like that story Steve Buscemi tells in, I think that's like Once Upon a Time in Mexico, about like the guy who pees on the bar. Yeah, it's kind of like that where he, but like it's an obvious like bit to steal this guy's money, and the guy is like, that was stupid, give me my $20 back, and he's like, no. And so we established, like, Clive has now had 2 public confrontations with guys in the bar, and this guy confronts him later that night and is like, give me my money back, and he's like, no, and he punches Clive and knocks him out. And while Clive is knocked out, the werewolf shows up and kills this guy. So now, like, 2 people that Clive has had confrontations with. I guess this is also his alibi, because we, the audience, see that he's, like, knocked out and couldn't be the werewolf. But,
yeah, and it's super interesting because it almost becomes, like... Well, I guess we'll get to it fully, but it kind of almost becomes a little bit meta with how Jesus, excuse me, I didn't mean to burp like that. Wow. Oh. Exercise a demon in the middle, a werewolf demon in the middle of that.
Oh no.
No, I just turned into a werewolf. Yeah, it's very interesting how Clive, like, it's almost like what we thought about him, it kind of flips, and we find out the bad guy is, like, trying to frame him, but which we'll get at too fully.
Yeah.
But, yeah, like you said, this scene kind of works as the dramatic irony, the, like, oh, he's not. Well, who is it? You know?
Yeah. And then we get an important aside where Pappy is making chili, and someone pulls up, and they, like, ask him for directions, and they drive off, and it kicks up a bunch of dirt that ends up in his chili. And then, like, 3 or 4 people over the course of the next 2 scenes walk by and are like, hey, you know there's dirt in his chili? And he's like, yeah. And he's, like, upset about it. It's just, like, a whole bit about dirt in Pappy's chili.
When we do our live event doing the Howling 7, we're going to have one item on the menu, and it's going to be dirt chili.
See, our live show in Pioneer Town, where we play this movie on a projector.
In Pioneer, no one's done it. We have to do it.
It'll be like the Pioneer Town version of Blobfest.
Exactly.
So then that following morning, some of the ladies from the town, they find the guy who died, and they have this conversation about, like, this is a lot, and, like, we don't need another death on the town, so we should just bury this guy and, like, not report that he died. And so there's, like, it's this whole, like, Twin Peaks subplot about, like, the people of the town, like, having their own secret now. And the 2 girls who were, like, looking into Clive are like, like, I can't remember if they find anything on this guy, but they're like, that's interesting that, like, the guy that he fought with, like, ends up dying.
And, I think the movie only gives you that.
Yeah, and then, right, like, we have another shot of Clive at the bar. And then we go back, and it's literally like a gossip circle. Like, there's like 5 or 6 like of these ladies, like, all talking about.
Well, and it's kind of funny how they set it up, how he blocks the scene, because it's very like theater. It's very theatrical, because it's like literally like a group of women whispering and pointing, and then it like almost whip pans over to like Clive and a woman dancing.
Do you think he was like a theater guy at some point?
Do you know what? Hearing that he was a gaffer kind of makes me feel like he was a theater guy. Because I know gaffers are in film, but, like, I feel like that's also a theatrical stick. That's, like, a very, like, cross skill, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And a lot of, like, I feel like a lot of gaffers I know, like, have worked at, like, in live shows or theater. A little bit. So, I mean, that's my deduction.
Although, yeah. But they also established so far everyone who's died, like, has had their throat ripped out or whatever. So they're like, there must be a mountain lion around here. And we cut back to, so the priest and the inspector take a break from talking to each other. And the priest goes to drives over to meet Marie from the Howling Four. And she basically gives, like, a recap of her entire movie. Although, the funny part is, she gives a recap without mentioning, damn it, I can't remember her name now, but, like, the retired nun that was, like, her best friend in that movie. Which is really funny, because, like, I've heard people comment, they're like, it feels like she's just trying to take sole credit for defeating all the werewolves. But also, it is funny that her, like, you know, this person that she bonded with who, like, sacrificed herself, and Marie's, like, just not gonna mention her at all.
I noticed I clocked that same thing. I was like, wow, she doesn't want to share the spotlight, huh?
Maybe it's too painful. She doesn't want to think about that part.
I think it's, like, more like a Gilderoy Lockhart where, like, you know, it's revealed that, like, he just steals everything from everyone he's with.
She apparently wasn't too traumatized to mention her husband melting. But yeah. Yeah, and we get more, like, that's so much of my notes are, like, there's some exposition. We go back to the bar. There's more exposition. We go back to the bar. But yeah, so eventually, so the priest leaves, and, like, Marie's like, I don't know if you believe in werewolves, and he's like, actually, I do believe in werewolves. Funny you bring that up. Because I think that's why she called the priest. She was like, she needed to tell someone, like, get it off her chest or whatever. But after the priest leaves, the werewolf, which I think is the same werewolf, like, shows up and kills her by pushing her off a balcony. Which is also kind of a bummer, because it's like, oh, she survived part 4, and now she's dead.
And now, damn. Yeah.
And then, yeah, now things kind of come to a head because...
Which, I gotta say, really quick side note, it made me realize how little I really revered Howling 4. Because when it happened, I was like, oh, man, that's sad. But I wasn't no, you know?
Yeah. I was like, they brought this actress back and, like, all for that, huh? I mean, you know. But then the stakes start, it's like a low stakes thing that, like, becomes higher stakes later, because, like, they're all hanging out around a campfire and, like, singing along with these tapes that Clive has, and, like, someone accidentally puts in a different tape, and it's one of his, like, personal recordings, and it's one where he just reads the entire town for filth, where he's like, this town where people go to try and keep their dying dreams alive, knowing that they'll never actually amount to anything in life, and so they just wallow in dancing and whatever. But he like, reads them for filth and says all this shit, and he's like, but I like them because I'm kind of like that too, or something like that. But that basically, like,
have you ever gotten a text from somebody that, like, they weren't supposed to send to you? They were, like, supposed to send to somebody else? Because one time it was, like, this girl I knew who, like, we were starting to become friends, and she, like, wanted me to, like, photograph her modeling a bunch of, like, band merch for a band she knew. And I was like, I'll give you, like, a discounted rate, but, like, you know, I'm, like, a freelancer, and this is, like, how I pay my bills, and, like, you know what I mean? Like, I can't, like, do this for free, essentially.
Yeah.
And then she's like, oh my god, no worries, we don't really have a lot of money, and blah, blah, blah. Like, she trying to whittle it down. And then I was, like, really thinking about it. I was like, oh, okay, I'll probably just do it for free, you know, we'll see. And then she sent me a text message that was, like, she was supposed to send it to, like, the head of the band or whatever. And it was just her bitching about how I was asking for money. And she was like, my Erin's little whiny baby voice. I have to get paid. Wah, wah. And it was, like, crazy. I remember I just said, I don't think that was for me, but I'm definitely not going to take the photos now. And then she was like, oh my god, I'm so sorry. And I was like, I think I just kind of like ghosted the situation. It was a lot.
Yeah,
but that is exactly what the scene was.
Yeah. But so now nobody in the town likes him anymore. And immediately, like, because it was kind of like, it was like, oh, people are dying, but like, we like you, so we're not, like, obviously it's not you. And now, like, you know what? Fuck you. We're gonna look into you as a guy who killed who is responsible for this. And this cop, the town cop, like, has him like tied up in like a garage somewhere, and like is interrogating him, and like Clive gets this like Steven Seagal moment where he like escapes and like beats the cop up and like runs off into the...
Which, that was the most surreal part, because it looks like he's in his garage, but then like he's kind of outside, and it kind of looks like the hotel also.
Yeah. I'm not sure. Oh, and then so the sheriff like follows him outside, but then gets got by the werewolf. But we see the werewolf, and I'm pretty sure the werewolf footage was like stock footage from 5. Because it's like a part where it emerges from the shadows.
Yeah.
And so now the inspector and the priest, they find Clive, and they lock him up, because they're like, you know, oh, this guy's been here for all these murders. And the priest is like, if he's a werewolf, he's the spawn of the devil, and we need to kill him right now before he gets any more powerful. And the inspector's like, that's not how police work.
He's like, it's how this police works. Also, this isn't how police work. Rich.
Yeah. That's not how the inspector works. I don't even know if he's an actual policeman. He might just be an eccentric. Who knows? But while they're deliberating, Clive escapes, and this is where, like, I think you could tell their like budget for the movie kind of started running out, because like it cuts to like the next day, and then we have the two of them talking about a bunch of stuff that we haven't seen, but like, it's like they time skip and then fill us in on everything that happened since the time skip. Because they're deliberating, and then it cuts to the next day, and they're like, yeah, he did this and he escaped, and then we see the footage of him escaping. It's like a really weird way to like connect things without having all the scenes together.
Well, it's like incredibly convoluted, and like also it's difficult because like you could tell Clive is kind of figuring out how to storytell during this.
Yeah.
So you almost by this point don't know what is important and what's not going to be important. So I think it makes reading this information more confusing. But what were we going to say?
You know what? This scene specifically, the way it like jumps ahead and then goes back to fill us in on old stuff, I think this is where the other director left. And so he was like, I'm going to have these two guys come in and exposit to fill in the gaps of the footage that we weren't able to shoot.
Oh my
God. This feels very much like that.
That, you know what? That makes a lot of sense, actually.
Yeah. So they're like on the hunt, and Clive runs off, and he finds this house. There's one of the ladies from the town is like helps him hide, and she's like someone comes by, and she's like, oh nope, he's not here. And then
I think her name is like Cheryl.
Yeah. And she's like, oh, you can come out now. And she's like, drives him off somewhere. And then like is like, well, actually, they say something, and she's like, don't you recognize, because we also, it's not a thing we know at first, but when they're interrogating him, it's revealed that Clive is the same guy who all the characters he's played in all these movies are the same person. And because he's like seen werewolf stuff before, he got hired by Marie to like go to this town and like I think like find like if there was werewolf stuff. I think
it kind of feels like Resident Evil, where like after everybody kind of gets out of the city, they form like that stars.
Yeah.
And then they all just kind of vaguely go around and like take
out
the like
the werewolf BSAA.
Exactly. This is the werewolf BSAA. Yes.
Clive Turner is
oh my
the
God,
Chris Redfield of the Howling.
God, Clive Turner is. They're kind of like himbos in the same way.
He's gonna punch a boulder in the Howling 9. But she's like, don't you recognize my voice? You heard it before in Romania. Which doesn't make sense because she's using a different voice, like they established that. But it's revealed that she's Mary Lou.
My syntax, do you not realize this is how I've always spoken?
Yeah. She's Mary Lou, and she, like, shape-shifted into a different lady. And
then it's revealed, that's why I say I think they thought Mary Lou was the dead body in the beginning, because the actual dead body is revealed to be the woman Mary Lou is pretending to be.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I see what you're, yeah. And then, the inspector and the priest show up, and they're like, actually, we were on Clive's side, and we got you to confess to being a werewolf. And the inspector's like, I'm smart and you're dumb. And then she, like, turns into a werewolf. And I don't know what they expected to happen. This is kind of...
yeah, she makes it very clear.
she like, turns into a werewolf, but it's, like, the cheesiest, like, Animorphs VFX, like, morph.
It's literally the Animorphs cover.
And then they just fucking, like, light her up. And she's dead.
Yeah, because she's gonna, like, frame him for everything, I guess.
Yeah, because she's like, that's why she didn't kill him all those times she had a chance to, because she was like, I can, like, kill all these people, and then you take the fall for it, so then I can do whatever.
Which is kind of funny, because I don't even think she needed to go that far. Nobody, like, thought it was her.
Yeah. Everyone's like, this is clearly a wild animal, but, yeah.
Yeah, they say they say they're suspicious of Mary Lou in the beginning, but, like, that really has nothing to do with why she makes the decision to, like, frame him.
Yeah. But, like...
So it's kind of funny,
yeah.
but...
Yeah, so they kill the werewolf, and they're like, well, that happened. And then we're back in the bar, and
thank God that's over. Everybody want to get a drink?
Like, Harriet's up on stage, and she's like, this is a great, like, they're performing, and she's like, this is a great show tonight. Ted, we're really sorry about all that stuff that happened. And then they're just, like, hanging out. And that's like the end.
And then he gets the mic, and he starts singing.
Yeah, that's like, and like literally that's the line. She's like, Ted, we're really sorry about all that stuff that happened. And it's like, I guess that means we're good now.
And then they all are. Happily ever after, everybody.
Yeah.
Which I guess that's the happily ever after ending of the Howling franchise, the first bit of it.
Yeah, this whole timeline.
Yeah.
Where some say he's still in Pioneer Town to this day.
Some say when you stand in the middle of Pioneer Town at night and close your eyes and the moon's in the right spot, you can hear the tapping of the line dancing in... What is his name?
What?
Who owns the whatever?
What? Pappy and Harriet's?
Pappy. You can hear the line dancing in Pappy and Harriet's. Like a chorus of ghosts.
They have such a cute website. Like, it's got, like, this animation of the road out in the desert.
Pioneer Town?
Yeah, Pappy and Harriet's, like, there's a website for it, and it's got their menu. You can get chips and salsa. This video is
sponsored by Pappy's and Harriet's. Pappy and Harriet's, come spend your money here.
You can get a Rosy Boa cocktail.
Do they have a Howling beverage?
They do not. Which feels like a missed opportunity. I'm saying they gotta lean into this.
When you ask for the Howling special, they just give you a Coors Light.
They just throw you out of the building. They're like, how dare you?
You make me sick. You know how long it's taken us to get out of this image that we're just a bunch of werewolves? Werewolf line dancers?
But, yeah.
That's the Howling.
Yeah, it's... Yeah.
No, it's not a Howling movie, but I don't hate it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I liked
it's weirdly
the parts,
pleasant.
Yeah, they're like... I think it could have been a short film about the town. But the short film about the town that I liked was there, and I had a good time for that,
Yeah, that's... I guess, yeah, because that's the thing is, like, I can't say that this was a well-made movie, but I would watch it again. It's like, it's
a film that is, like, I almost feel like I can't get mad at it, because it feels in earnest.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like, when I watch, like, the Three Stooges movie, I'm angry, and I feel like that's, like, creatively bankrupt. And I feel like that's just, like, you know what I mean? AI-written movie, essentially. You know what I mean? But, like, with this, it's like, somebody's working out somebody's working out the kinks of themselves as, like, a filmmaker. And, yeah, it's a little rough, but, like, it's delightful.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting note to send out. So we have one more Howling film. But, yeah, this is the end of, like, what we'll call the classic Howling era.
How many howls would you give this one?
I don't know how to answer that. I'd give it one I'd give it one howl and 2 line dancing steps.
They should have had them all line dancing and howling at the end.
Yeah, we didn't get to see a werewolf line dance. That would have put this movie on like the
Then we would have been talking.
Also, my soul left my body a little bit because there's a live music section on the Pappy and Harriet's website.
Oh my god, could we go see Pappy and Harriet?
Hawthorne Heights is going to be playing at Pappy and Harriet's.
Oh my god.
Like the Ohio is for Lovers band.
That's a crossover episode right there if I've ever heard one.
And I just needed to share that with all of you.
Well, everybody.
Yeah, so
we'll see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow, and we will close out this Howling journey that we have been on.
Oh.
Oh. Oh. See, we're getting better at it.
Yeah, give us 3 more years and we'll be fully grown werewolves.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Hey everyone, Evie here. If you enjoyed today's episode of Movies After Midnight, consider giving us the old like and subscribe so that you can stay up to date when we drop new episodes. If you didn't enjoy today's episode of Movies After Midnight, consider following me on one of the many social media platforms out there and leaving criticisms or strongly worded hate speech. Either way, thanks for tuning in. Hopefully I'll see you next time.